All right, welcome back to another video. Man, it's been a bit. All right, today I'm going to be doing my favorite games of 2023. Counting down as 2023, as of when I'm recording this, will end in about 2 days. So I figured let's talk about our favorite games and our favorite stuff in general. I'll upload a bit more, but our favorite games of the year. Now, my criteria for this list is how much I enjoyed the game. Um, Realistically, is like just how much I enjoyed the game, but other things will be taken into account, such as maybe story, gameplay, of course, visuals, music, all that, all the like. But it'll realistically come down to how much I enjoyed the game and what games I enjoyed more than most. Now, with that being said, I of course do have to get some honorable mentions out of the way because these are games that I would say didn't quite make the list because of one reason or another, but because of the fact that I didn't have that many hours played in them, and so I can't really properly judge these games compared to the other 10 on this list, and B, I just didn't think it constituted making the list, right? I think they're good games that I have to give an honorable mention to, a shout out, of course, but they just weren't good enough to make this list. And the three games that I have here, yes, only three, are Lies of P, Hogwarts Legacy, and Armored Core 6. All three of these games, two of these games, Lies of P or Armored Core, are just games that I just unfortunately could not put enough time into. I still enjoyed when I played at them. And Hogwarts, I did put a little bit more time into. I didn't beat it. From what I played, I really enjoyed it. But for me, it just doesn't stack up to the top 10. So let's get started. All right, at number 10 we have Street Fighter 6. Now, a lot of my issues with Street Fighter 6 and the reason why it's not like higher boils down to just my preference of fighting games, right? I'm not saying this game is bad. I'm saying the game is really good, hence it made number 10, right? It made the list, right? But the thing about Street Fighter 6, for me at least, is that because I grew up playing I'm a Mortal Kombat player first, right? I know all that stuff, and then I've gotten recently into like a lot of the anime fighters, such like Under Night In-Birth and Guilty Gear and BlazBlue and stuff like that. And even I love Tekken, right? But Street Fighter doesn't really do it for me. Now, not to say that I did enjoy the game, right? I thought the World Tour mode was really fun. I really enjoyed myself, as well as I had a lot of fun those first couple of days or first couple of weeks playing the game, right? I'm not a big Street Fighter player, but I still really enjoyed myself playing the game. The issue with Street Fighter 3 or Street Fighter 6 for me is that, once again, I'm just not a Street Fighter player, and so therefore I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I probably would have if I was. Which is fine. Not every game is for me, as I know, as much as I wish it was. But not to say it's a bad game. I still had a lot of fun with it, and I know a lot of other people had a lot of fun with it. All right, number 9, we have another fighting game. One of the things that I mentioned earlier, Mortal Kombat 1. Now, I'm gonna try and go a bit more in depth with this one because I have a bit more to say about MK1. So, the thing about Mortal Kombat 1 is, yes, the game is largely unfinished, right? The game has a lot of issues in which, there's a lot of content. It feels lacking in content, as well as, the whole in-game purchase thing is really dicey, as well as online is really weird. But otherwise, the thing about MK1 that I absolutely love, first off, its story is really good. It's a really good story mode. NetherRealm, more often than not, there's some instances where they don't, but more often than not, they do really good with the story mode. Has some issues towards the end, but otherwise, it has a really good story mode. But I absolutely adore MK1's gameplay. Sunk a lot of time into this game and its gameplay. Why? Because I feel like first off, I'm kind of used to Mortal Kombat and NRS games in general, used to how those games play. Because I've been playing them for a decade now, more than that. This game kind of jived me a bit more. But as well as it allows a lot of creativity, right? with the cameo system, I absolutely adore the cameo system. I don't think I can imagine this game without it. And the cameo system opens up a really cool combo routes and you know in-game in-game fights that could be really good and really fun. That you know it made experimenting and labbing a lot more fun in this game than it did in MK11 or something. Because I might have had it on the list at some point, but as time went on, I found myself enjoying MK11 less and less, for a variety of these reasons. But Mortal Kombat 1 is a game that I know that if I haven't played for a while, I know I can go back to it, boot it up, have a fun time, for like 45 minutes until something online makes me upset and causes me to quit the game. But game I know I could go back to. Great graphics, great gameplay in my opinion. Just needs a little bit more in content wise, and they need to fix up the in-game purchases a bit. I know they're already adjusting online. So yeah, otherwise it'd be a great game. But yeah, Mortal Kombat 1 is number 9. Alright, at number 8, we have a game that genuinely was a last minute addition to this list not because I played it extremely recently, but because I forgot, right? Which is so unfortunate because I think this game is absolutely outstanding and phenomenal. And it's a game that you probably have never heard of. That's Coffee Talk Episode 2. Hibiscus and Butterflies, I think it was called. I just had the Episode 2 thing up here. This game's great. It's like 6 hours long. It's like a 5 or 6 hour long game. But the first Coffee Talk game, which I played on the second channel, same thing with MK1. You can go over there and check it out. My playthrough of that. The first Coffee Talk game was great. It made me think, right? Any game that can make me think is phenomenal. But it really did make me think about relationships and, what people mean to each other and the everyday lives of other people and how, things could be going on that we don't see. We just see like their outward personality, whereas, there's could be other factors to it that can really affect a person, and how they look to you, right? I think that's what Coffee Talk does great, conveying those relationships and emotions that everybody feels, even if you're, despite how different you may look, different races, different genders, different body sizes. In this case, in Coffee Talk, different freaking species even. But it shows that everybody has stuff going on, and everybody has, inner turmoil that makes them, right? That makes them who they are, for better or for worse, right? And that's why I absolutely adore this game. Now, the gameplay is nothing special, you're watching people talk. You're brewing coffee for people, you're getting collectibles on doing it. It's a chill game. Lo-fi in the background. It's really chill, but it's really enjoyable. And while I don't think Episode 2 is as good as Episode 1, I think Episode 1 is absolutely outstanding. But I think Episode 2 was still a lot of fun to be had, and it's a game that impacted me a lot. Alright, number 7. Is Like Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name. For context, I have played all the Yakuza games. I absolutely love Zero. I adore Kiwami. Kiwami is probably my favorite for some reason. I adored Kiwami 2 up until like the last 2 hours. The last 2 hours of that game kind of ruined the game for me. I hated Yakuza 3. I really enjoyed Yakuza 4. I did not like Yakuza 5. Thought Yakuza 6 was great. Yakuza 7 was phenomenal. And thought Judgment was hot garbage. All of those which I have played on my second channel. I thought Judgment was hot garbage. So I didn't really know what to expect when going into this game. All I know is that it would be it's definitely short, but a shorter Like a Dragon adventure with Kiryu back in the main role. And because of my ups and downs with the Yakuza franchise, it's still like one of my favorite franchises of all time. But with my ups and downs with this franchise and its entries, I wasn't sure what to expect with this one. And I'll definitely tell you, I wasn't expecting the emotional gut punch this game gave you, right? Like, I'm gonna be completely honest. The first two chapters I thought were okay. I thought they were pretty good. All things considered. Chapter 2 took me way longer than it probably should have to get through. But I still really enjoyed the game for what it was, New Kiryu gameplay, which his gameplay hadn't really changed in, once again, 7 or 8 games or something like that. With the Aegis style was really cool and everything that you could do with that. And the story was pretty okay. However, things really get into gear with like the second half of the game where you start, things start making a bit more sense, and then you start, everything kind of starts lining up with Yakuza Like a Dragon, and things kind of go in and out. You go back and forth between the POV of Kiryu in Like a Dragon, and what actually happened during this segment from Kiryu's perspective. I think it was really good. I thought it was phenomenal. I really enjoyed, like I said, really good was an understatement. Phenomenal is the word I'm using for it. And it was really enjoyable. And then you end up at the end, and the emotional gut punch, like I said earlier, that this game gives you is amazing, because you had this scene of Kiryu crying while looking at, not going to say good spoilers, right? But it's one of those things that you use to reflect on everything that Kiryu has been through in the past, God, 7 games at this point, right? And you realize that how good and layered and how much depth this character has, and how much this character means to you as yourself as a player, but as well as all of the other people in the world, right? All the other people that he knows. And the story of this game kind of transitions into that really, really well. You at the end, you kind of just, throughout this entire game, you just kind of just want Kiryu to be happy, right? Which is the greatest, that conveying that emotion is the greatest thing a video game can do to me. And this is why I absolutely adore games that are great but will all absolutely F me up, because it's the greatest thing a game could do, because it shows that, it got me to care about something. Which is why Like a Dragon Gaiden is number 7. Alright, number 6 and number 5 are both games that I did not actually beat. However, I put a ton of hours into both of these games, where I feel like I am able to judge them, but I can't judge them as highly as I probably would if I had beaten them, which is why they fall towards the middle of the list, right? For one reason or another, I wasn't able to beat them, and I'll explain that when I get to it. But yeah, let's just get on with number 6. Number 6 is The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. One of the games, like I said, I just couldn't beat. A lot of that had to do with the fact that by the time I got maybe like 70 hours in that game, 70, 80 hours, I was doing pretty good in regards to progress. And then a certain game that will place way higher up on this list came out, and I just wasn't able to beat the game because I was obsessed with that for a bit. But Tears of the Kingdom fixes everything that I didn't like about Breath of the Wild, because I'm just not going to keep it a secret, keep it 100% with you. I don't like Breath of the Wild. That's just my sentiment for most open world games in general. Wasn't a fan of Horizon Zero Dawn. I had my issues with Elden Ring, and so when I went into Tears of the Kingdom, I went in thinking, right, I'll play a decent amount of it, but I won't I won't absolutely fall in love with it. And I did fall in love with Tears of the Kingdom. I thought Tears of the Kingdom was an improvement in every way, shape, and form, right? Maybe it's because I know what I'm doing in video games now better than I did when I played Breath of the Wild. But Tears of the Kingdom, I loved exploring in this game more, the creativity you could do with, the freaking ancient devices and making like different weapons and different like vehicles and stuff. I absolutely adored. I not adored, but I did really enjoy the Sky Islands and the depths, and what they provide to the game. Just adding a little bit of extra. Now, the Sky Islands and the depths both can be very boring. Some of those islands are boring, But for what they provide to the game, adding just a bit of extra touch on this world that's already really good, I really enjoyed that aspect. Combat, I feel like, is more the same, but it's better. I love the arm stuff rather than everything on the tablet. I think that that's better. I think the story I enjoyed way more. Is what once again when I played the story I enjoyed really way more. I was like maybe 75% of the way through that game. But yeah, overall my sentiments with Tears of the Kingdom is I just enjoyed this game way more than Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is one it just didn't do it for me, and Tears of the Kingdom absolutely did, and I actually sunk a whole bunch of time into this, and I think that's an overall improvement, enough to get it to number 6. Number 5, the other game that I couldn't quite complete, but put a decent amount of hours into, and I could beat this game because a certain video game franchise, which I will be including in a list sooner or later, absolutely took over my life towards the end of this year, so I couldn't play as much as I really wanted to, but I'm going to try and make that different. At some point in 2024, I'll try and play more of it. That's Baldur's Gate 3. This is one of those games that, wins every award and, wins everything, and I can't be mad at it because now that I've played it, I think it's absolutely outstanding. I've liked D&D for a while. I think I've been a D&D fan for a couple of years now. And so Baldur's Gate 3 was one of those games that I just me being new to the whole D&D sphere, even if I've been involved for a couple of years, just being new to the sphere, I didn't really know what Baldur's Gate was before it came out. And when I realized it was a D&D game and people absolutely loved it, I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. But the thing is that with my schedule at the moment, as well as with how expensive games are nowadays, I'm not sure if it'll be worth the $60 or $70 I ended up paying for it, or if I'll have the time to play it. And evidently I didn't, but that's another thing. But when I finally got around to it, after a couple of hours, I realized this is absolutely worth the money. This game has a stupid amount of content that you could play. Combat takes I absolutely love turn-based combat, right? Turn-based combat is my favorite type of combat. But when this game took me a bit to adapt to. This game, you're going to have to go in with an open mind, because I wasn't a fan at first. It's D&D combat, right? But the thing is that in this format, I wasn't sure if I was a fan. And then the more you go along, the more you adapt, the more you think about things for a little bit, the more you realize, oh, this combat system is really good. It's really good. Everything is in depth. Just so many options, so many things you can do. So many branching storylines that are all really enjoyable. All the characters are really enjoyable to be around, and all have like different types of personalities and stuff. And it really is it really is a game that I know I could sink like hundreds of hours into if I wanted to, or if I had the time, if I wasn't obsessed with another video game franchise at the moment. But yeah, I really am hoping to get back to Baldur's Gate 3 at some point in 2024, because from the time that I did have with it, I absolutely loved it. Alright, number 4, a game that's very controversial among the gaming community for one reason or another. Good reasons, but for one reason or another. That's Starfield. This is a game that I did complete. I did beat. I sunk about 90 to 100 hours in this game. And I don't really mess with or rock with Bethesda games like that. But I do love a good space game. I love space. I love science fiction. I really enjoy it. And Starfield was definitely a game I kind of had mid expectations for. I was like, it'll be fine. It'll be okay. I enjoyed this game way more than I thought I would. I really did. And I personally think that Starfield was a really, really fun experience that reminded me a lot of Cyberpunk 2077. And a lot of the ways of how it plays and storylines or whatnot. shout out to Cyberpunk 2077 really quickly. That game didn't make the list because I decided to exclude expansions from this, which is why that, as well as Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed, didn't make the list, because if they did, they'd probably be like right here. Both of those expansions were absolutely phenomenal, but I decided not to include them in this list. Right. Anyway, Starfield, its graphics is pretty good. Nothing to shout at. Right. Its gameplay is really fun, in my opinion. Traversal and how worlds or planets work and how traveling to them works, kind of meh, right? It isn't good, and I hope Bethesda does fix that eventually. But this is just a game that I personally had a lot of fun with, regardless of what other people said. I personally had a lot of fun with, which I could say about, you know, a lot of other things in media and stuff. Like, regardless of what other people says, if I personally jive with it and have a lot of fun with it, I will enjoy it. You know, I think all of the storylines, you know, main storyline was kind of up until like maybe the second half of that main storyline, but all the storylines I think are pretty good. Like, you know, especially like those those other main storylines, you know, with I can't remember, the faction quest, that's what it was called, the faction quest with like the UC Vanguard or whatnot, and Ryujin Industries and prison storyline. Like, all those are really good, really fun faction quests, and the Freestar Rangers and stuff like that. Really good, really fun. I just didn't expect them to be as amazing as they were. Those storylines were absolutely phenomenal. Some of the best I've seen in gaming in a while. Like, just those are like storylines that you could realistically miss on. Those are side storylines that you can miss on. I really enjoyed them a lot. And then my last thing about Starfield, I want to say, ship gameplay or ship customization is so good. It's so fun to just spend like an hour or two customizing your ship, and then seeing what works and what doesn't. And when you finally get that perfect ship that you want, that perfect combination, going out into space and testing it out and see how it works is so fun. It's so gratifying, and I really did enjoy this game way more than a lot of other people, and I will keep that to myself. I guess I'll you know, other people can hate on this game, but I will say it's great. I loved it. And so number 3, right, we're finally approaching the top 3, and I kind of had to figure out how I wanted to approach number 2, 3, and 4. Number 1 was already set in stone. I already know what number 1 is. But number 2, 3, and 4, I kind of had to approach how I wanted to arrange these, because they realistically, for me at least, could switch around depending on how I'm feeling that day. But I ended up deciding on, you know, Starfield being number 4 and Hi-Fi Rush being at number 3. Man, this game really came out of nowhere. And it's so unfortunate because this game came out at the beginning of the year, and so it's subject to, you know, people forgetting about it as the year went on. But this game got shadow dropped out of nowhere, and it ended up being one of the best games of the year for whatever reason, right? It just combines everything that I love about, you know, Devil May Cry, and character action games. Like, I absolutely adored Devil May Cry 5. I adored Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. I think those games are phenomenal. And then rhythm games, which is stuff that I, you know, grew up on. Like, the first video game I ever played was Rock Band 2, right? And I love rhythm games ever since. I still, any rhythm game I, like, you know, experience, whether it be like an extra like side mini game or game mode or a full-fledged game, I'll still take the time to sink some hours into it. I absolutely adore rhythm games. So you combine character action games with rhythm games, and then a really fun and unique art style that you don't see too often in the gaming industry these days for some reason. And fun and enjoyable, lovable characters that you'll end up with one of the best games of the year. This is, I think, out of every one of these games on here, right? And even besides Baldur's Gate, out of every one of these games on here, I think this is the perfect video game. This is probably the most perfect video game on this list. I think Hi-Fi Rush is short and sweet, right? It doesn't take up too much of your time. It'll take like maybe 8 to 10 hours to beat. If that, I think it took me less. But it'll take about that time to beat. It's a fun experience. It's a blast you out throughout the entire time. You never get bored. it's just, you know, the perfect fun turn your brain off video game. I can't even say turn your brain off because the storyline is pretty good. It's just all around. It's just all around a great, amazing game is what I'm trying to say. There's nothing about Hi-Fi Rush I don't think that is an issue, or at least video game, like, you know, in regards to the video game itself. For me, the game gave me headaches, but that's just because my eyes don't work as like my eyes, and I get headaches. I get headaches a lot. So, you know, that's a me issue, not a game issue. Otherwise, I think the game is absolutely perfect in every way, shape, or form, and you should definitely go play it because it's just the most fun time you will have in a video game this year. Number 2, all right. The other game that probably could have been swapped out for number 3 or whatnot, if I really wanted to, but I decided to keep it here for a lot of reasons. Spider-Man 2. Okay. Now, I am on comic book Twitter a lot, and I know comic book Twitter has very, very interesting opinions of this game. In regards to the story, I really enjoyed the story. I thought the story was great. Do I think Spider-Man 1 story is better? Yes, it is. Objectively, it is. But I still really enjoyed the story of what we got with this game. I absolutely loved the improvements they made to traversal. And I hope I mentioned the name Spider-Man 2. I really did hope I mentioned the name. That would be the most unfortunate situation in the world. But anyway, the improvements to traversal with, you know, the web wings and airways, and, you know, you can do freaking loop-to-loops and stuff like that. I think all that is really cool. You can turn off fall damage, and that's really funny. Combat is much better. It feels way more improved. You know, the second half of the game with the whole symbiote stuff is really cool. You know, there's a certain boss fight in there, like the second last boss fight, that's just absolutely amazing. Venom is great. There's a certain section with Venom that's awesome, that's amazing. And, you know, I think a lot of issues with Spider-Man 2 does come down to, you know, the story, but I think the story is great. I think all the side quests were great, graphics were great, photo mode phenomenal. We all love photo mode here. But I think Spider-Man 2, keep this short and sweet. Spider-Man 2 is just overall a game that, while even if I was streaming it, right, I normally tell myself stream for like 3 hours, just so you don't get headaches, because that just happens to me a lot. It's a game that I just never wanted to put down. Never wanted to stop streaming. I just wanted to keep going, which is why it's, you know, number 2. And number 1, to nobody's surprise at all, because of course it is, my number 1 game of the year is, of course, Final Fantasy 16. The Final Fantasy community, once again with comic book Twitter, has a lot of very interesting takes on this game, as does the Final Fantasy community that's just kind of what they do. They're all weird, but I am also weird. But I loved Final Fantasy 16. This aside from a series that I'm playing at the moment, is some of the most hyped stuff I've ever experienced in a video game. Like, oh my god, right? I don't think I've ever been more hyped in a video game than this one, right? The first half of the video game is absolutely phenomenal. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfect, right? There's literally nothing wrong with it. The second half definitely has its pacing issues. It definitely does. But I still really enjoyed myself with the second half, even if the pacing did make it feel longer and more tedious than anything. But I absolutely adore the characters. Clive is my guy. He's probably my second favorite Final Fantasy protagonist now, right behind Terra from Final Fantasy VI. It's just all the side characters are really cool and interesting. Like, you know, Cid, and you end up with you know, Jill, and Torgal is just best boy. But Torgal, and, you know, even you get to other characters like Benedicta and Barnabas and Dion and Joshua and even freaking, Kupka and Gav of all characters, right? Gav is just a character that you like seeing on screen, right? And all the characters are great. The combat, like I said, I absolutely adore character action combat. So, seeing just, more Devil May Cry combat but in my Final Fantasy game was so nice to me. I really enjoyed it. Side quests could have been better. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I tend to be kind of about side quests. In general, I try not to do a lot of them, but this year specifically, I got into the habit of doing most side quests in the game. I'm pretty sure I did every single side quest at FF16 on my first playthrough, which was a mistake, which I will admit was probably a mistake. But side quests could have been better, but there were some really good standout-ish ones in there, and graphics were great. But even the music's peak. Music is amazing. But of course, I have to mention the boss fights in this game. The boss fights were the crown jewel of this game because, funnily enough, I think these are some of the best boss fights, if not some of the best. These are the best boss fights ever created. Like, some of my favorite boss fights from last year, right? From games last year being, Kratos versus Heimdall and God of War Ragnarok, or Sonic versus Giganto and Sonic Frontiers. They don't even compare. They don't even reach the heights of Final Fantasy 16's boss fights. Like, the Bahamut boss fight, you end up fighting a giant dragon in space, right? With the phenomenal music playing in the background, and then you end up with, and then the Titan boss fight that's just God of War 3 at times. It's so cool. And the Odin boss fight, while my first playthrough, I thought the boss fight was kind of when I first played it, didn't compare. But then you think about the boss fight a bit more, and everything that boss fight did, how different it is compared to the other boss fights, and you start to appreciate it more. It feels more like more of a story boss fight, more like of a personal thing, with them just using their icons than the other fights. And the freaking L3 or R3, accept the truth or something. I always do forget what the line is, because it's so many things that also happen in God of War, you could say. But man, FF16, it just made me happy to be a Final Fantasy fan. I absolutely love being a Final Fantasy fan this year, and this game helps make me even happier to be a FF fan, which is why I'm looking so much to Rebirth next year, which I pre-ordered. It's coming out in a couple of months, and we'll be playing that on the second channel. But it just makes me happy to be a FF fan, and makes me excited for where the series is going to go in the future. And that wraps up the list for 2023 games, my top 10 2023 games. Now, of course, there are some games that didn't make this list, like Resident Evil 4 or Alan Wake 2. I acknowledge that those games are absolutely amazing. I'm playing through Control at the moment, so I can vouch for Alan Wake 2 probably being really good. I'm just not a horror person. It's just simple as that. I don't really like my horror. I know RE4 is technically, it feels like more of an action game, but even still, I'm not more of a horror person, so Resident Evil's never really interested me, and Alan Wake kind of came out of nowhere, and I acknowledge that it's good, but not a horror guy. There are definitely other games that probably, if I played more or I just got into them in general, I would have put on the list. Games like Wolong Fallen Dynasty or Sea of Stars, games like that probably would have made the list. But yeah, overall, I think it's been an absolutely phenomenal year for gaming. I don't think 2024 will be able to live up to this year. As 2024 for media in general is looking like a failure year, because we got some really good stuff across all forms of media this year. Movie, video coming soon. But 2023, looking back on it, has been an amazing year for gaming, or at least video games that have coming out. The gaming industry and all the layoffs, not so much. And there's been a lot of stuff going on, and I don't really want to address it because I'm not too knowledgeable in that aspect of the industry. I just play the stuff, but I really hope and pray just with, same thing with writers and actors, that, all developers are treated fairly, paid fairly, that, even after all the layoffs that have happened, that they are able to find jobs that they enjoy and suit them, and, you know, are able to support themselves and their families and whatnot. And like I said, just like writers and actors, during the strikes this year, I hope every developer and gamer in general are taking care of themselves and are able to, see and enjoy the next year of gaming that we have in store for us. Thank you for watching today's video. I will see you next time. Goodbye.